Welcome to the Lovers Lounge podcast, where we talk to experts and guests on topics and issues related to love, relationships, and sex. I am your host, Tina Love, and today we will be talking to Alice Little. Alice is a sex educator. She's a sex worker and has been deemed the #1 luxury companion of the year at the Moonlit Bunny Ranch in Nevada. Alice, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to chat with you today.
I know. I'm so excited to chat with you. And you are just as cute as a little button, I tell you. 4'8", huh?
Oh,
4'8"?
yes. Alice Little, the name is quite fitting after all.
That is so funny. Yes, you're just as cute as can be. So I'm so glad to have you on the Lovers Lounge to chat with me a bit. You have a very interesting career. You are a sex worker. So can you tell me what landed you into this type of work and exactly what you do?
Well, it's so much more than just being a sex worker. In so many ways, I'm really a facilitator of intimacy and connection and communication.
Great.
I came to this world by way of sex education. I previously was traveling around the country as a BDSM and sex educator, talking to men, women, and couples about how to have intimate encounters in a way that was safe, sane, and consensual. It was through there I learned about the legal brothels of Nevada and decided to make a foray out to the West and give it a try.
Wow.
I fell completely in love with the industry, and I've been there ever since.
Okay. And so we're going to get into more of what you're talking about in just a moment. But your work at the Moonlight Bunny Ranch, of course, you then service and work with men, women, and couples, as you mentioned. Is that correct?
Yes, that is true. And do keep in mind, too, we see individuals that are trans, intersex. The only thing we discriminate on is age. So long as you are 18 years of old, you are welcome.
All right. So now, what would you say then is your most popular demographic of customers then?
I would say one of the most unifying features I find within my guests is a curiosity to learn more about themselves and a desire to have a safe space in which to be able to do so. The unfortunate reality of our current society is that we don't necessarily create space for sexual self exploration. We don't have opportunities for people to try new things and ask questions and really explore themselves in that way. So I'd say more so than anything, or more so than one type of person, that's really the most unifying quality that I see in my guests.
Wow. Okay. And I noticed that you even have, oftentimes, there are young men who are virgins. Maybe they've never had sex before, and they come and have a date with you. So how do you handle those dates, and what do you do?
Oh my goodness. I love working with virgins of any age, whether it be a younger gentleman or an older gentleman that had just never had the opportunity to have that first sexual encounter.
Hmm.
My goal is to make it an actual experience for them. Generally speaking, I like to start out by leaving the ranch property and going on something that's called an out date, where we're able to go out to dinner, lunch, or go enjoy a mutually pleasurable activity such as a show, going to a museum, etc.
Hmm.
There, we have a chance to get to know each other a little bit better, flirt back and forth, kind of lean into some of that foreplay language, which is so important when it comes to establishing a connection with someone.
Right.
I also find that that helps address some of the anxiety and nerves that oftentimes come with a first sexual experience. This way, it's not just come on in, get off, get out of here, but no, let's actually create some memories, have a well thought out experience, something that allows you to actually lean into the fun and enjoyment of getting to lose it for the first time.
Right. Right. So how do you get your clients? So, I mean, does a person just call the ranch and do they see a bunch of photos and they pick who they would like to spend time with? Or how does this kind of happen? And then when they select the person, do you then find out who they are? Or do you just find out who they are when they walk in? Or how's this all work?
There's a couple of different ways in which guests are able to meet ladies. The first way is something called the lineup. If the guest has decided to not make an appointment and instead simply see who is available, a lineup bell is then rung, which lets all of the ladies currently on shift know that company has arrived. The ladies will then come out to the front parlor, introduce themselves by name, and then the guest will be able to select whichever lady catches his eye to then go on a tour. They'll get to see the facility, some of the different amenities, learn a little bit about Nevada brothel history, and then the tour concludes back in the ladies' suite, where they then have a conversation about what that guest is looking to experience and kind of go over price and the details. For myself, I have a little bit of a different scenario going on in that I'm only available by appointment. Unlike many of my coworkers that have a set shift in which they work, somebody would actually set up an appointment with me in advance. Most oftentimes that ends up happening through my email address, alicelittle@bunnyranch.com. The guest then reaches out to me and goes, "Hi, interested in possibly spending time with you." And from there, I'm able to answer any and all questions that they may have. And we work together to pick a day and time to meet. I also choose to keep in touch with my guests leading up to our date via text message. So this way, it's like meeting an old friend rather than a stranger.
Okay.
Same thing though, once they arrive at the ranch, we'll go on a full tour of the property and conclude back in my suite where we then have that conversation in regards to price, activities, etc.
Yeah. And this is interesting because people probably come from all over the country or maybe even abroad to come to the ranch. Is that correct?
Yes, I've had guests from pretty much all 50 states and probably 15 or 16 different countries. It's
Wow.
very unique in the sense that Nevada is the only one of the 50 states that has legal availability for brothels at this time.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about the ranch, because it's your luxury companion. So I bet the ranch is pretty nice, and you have to take them around and kind of walk around the facility and see it. Can you just kind of walk us around figuratively around the ranch and what we could expect to see?
Of course. So when you first enter the ranch, you'll be greeted by a big open parlor area that has this beautiful marble floor and big windows that really allow for natural light to come through and kind of showcase what the ladies look like. You'll also see photos of the owner of the ranch, Dennis Hoff, who unfortunately passed away last year, with him and some of the various celebrities that have come into the facility. Then we proceed forward into our lounge area, which is also attached to the world famous Bunny Bar. Many guests love to take a photo underneath that bright pink neon sign to kind of commemorate the fact that they were here at the Bunny Ranch.
Right.
As to the hallways themselves, guests will notice that they're a little bit small and narrow. That's because due to how Nevada law is written, we are not able to demolish any existing structures and instead have to improve upon them. Back in the day, the brothels were comprised of different trailer buildings that were all attached to each other. So while the rooms themselves have been updated time and time again, the hallways still remain classic and narrow, which I think is kind of a nice vintage touch. Each lady has her own room within the Bunny Ranch that she's able to decorate to her own tastes and desires. So when you arrive at my suite, you'll find really comfortable little love seat for the two of us to sit and chat. I've got an in-suite kitchenette, so I'm able to make us snacks. I have a TV with DVD player and Netflix, so we can always watch a movie and cuddle up in front of my fireplace. And I also have a really nice jacuzzi tub, walk-in shower, dry sauna, massage table, and it wouldn't be complete without a sex sofa. Keep
Okay.
in mind, too, that's just my suite at the ranch. We also have a full-scale kitchen that's fully stocked 24/7. We have an on-site gym available to ladies and guests that are staying for a longer period of time. We have a heated saltwater pool with an attached hot tub and even a jacuzzi that's separate from that, which is perfect for enjoying the beautiful Nevada stars.
Wow. So plenty of things to do at the ranch, huh?
Yes, and of course, we're not limited to just the ranch itself. Because I work in Lyon County where outdates are legal, we can actually travel anywhere we would so like within the state of Nevada, including Vegas.
Hmm. All right. Okay. Now, could it possibly be that someone comes there and maybe you don't have sex with them? You just hang out. I mean, have you ever had someone who just wants to hang out with a girl as pretty as you are?
Yes, all the time. Emotional intimacy is just as important as physical intimacy, especially with guests that are of a certain age. Physical intimacy may or may not be possible anymore in the traditional sense. I also work with guests that are disabled and may or may not have feeling below the waist. And
Mm.
as such, we find other ways to connect and communicate with each other.
Right. Okay. So, what's one of the, I don't know, one of the most, I don't know, weirdest dates or kind of a date that kind of stands out to you that you just will never forget that you had with a client?
Oh my gosh, that would probably be the time that we got stuck up in Tahoe due to an unexpected snowstorm.
Oh my God.
We had gone up there to go snowmobiling and we're planning on coming back down to the ranch and spending the night there. So we had left all of our bags there at the ranch. Well, the weather kind of had other plans because the second we were done snowmobiling, we get back to the car and yeah, there's no way we're going to get down from Tahoe to Carson City. We are well stuck for the night. So, of course, neither of us have any of our gears. No one has any prophylactics or lube. And so we end up going to Walmart during our date to kind of gather up supplies and amenities for the evening and ended up finding a really cute cabin right by the lake to enjoy for the night.
Okay. Interesting. And I bet you have other stories, but wow, that's pretty funny. Yeah. So,
Oh, yes.
yeah.
Snowed in with a snow bunny.
Yes. So, this is interesting because, I mean, you're getting people from all walks of life, people from all over the country and abroad, different circumstances, like you had mentioned, someone being disabled or different things like that. So, how do you stay safe as far as sex with a partner? So, staying safe physically and making sure that you're in a safe place, but then also staying safe physically, body wise, with a sexual partner.
Yes, condoms and protection are required by law for any and all activities at the Bunny Ranch.
Mhm.
For oral sex purposes on the ladies, we use dental dams. And we also conduct something called a DC, which stands for dick check. It's a very straightforward visual examination before the experience is fully booked to ensure that everything looks happy and healthy on our guests. As to us ladies, we're actually tested every 7 days for STDs and STIs as per Nevada state law. The doctor actually has an office right at the brothel property.
Hmm.
And so each week on Wednesdays, the ladies then go to the doctor and get their checks.
All right, good. So, have you ever had, now this is going to be kind of a weird question, but I just have to ask. Have you ever had a client who maybe turned out to be sort of like a creeper? Like you went out with him, he came there, and you just can't get rid of him. Like he's a little bit of a creeper. How do you
Hmm.
handle that? How do you handle that? Or have you ever had that?
I've not really found myself in that situation,
Okay, well, that's good.
largely in part because of the fact that we do have the ability to say no at any point in time for any reason at all if somebody makes us feel uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I choose not to push my boundaries. There's no price that I set on doing something that makes me feel personally uncomfortable. And the same is true with spending time with somebody that perhaps made me feel unsafe or uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If I get the sense that I might not be the right fit for somebody, I'll instead walk them back out to the parlor and introduce them to one of my coworkers that may be better suited for their desires.
Great. Okay, good. So you can do that. That's good. All right.
hmm
So,
It's all 100% consensual. The ladies get to determine what services they do offer, which services they don't offer, etc.
awesome. Very, very good. Very good. Okay, so now this is sort of a personal question. I don't know, but if you have a steady partner yourself, and so if you do, like, how does that work out with your work? Does it get in the way of the relationship with your partner, with your steady partner?
Well, I happen to be single at this time, but many of my coworkers are in committed relationships, whether it be boyfriends, husbands, girlfriends, or wives. There are absolutely many sex workers that have long term successful relationships within this particular career.
Mm-hmm.
Like all things, I think it really comes down to the openness of communication, the ability to trust your partner, as well as a certain level of understanding and empathy for those who work in this career field. By all means, though, sex workers can definitely be in very successful careers, much in this, or very successful relationships,
Mm-hmm.
much in the same way that, say, a doctor or
Yeah.
a cop might have to, oh, I'm sorry, gotta run to work, duty calls. It's the same kind of thing. You just have those conversations in advance and make sure that everybody's comfortable.
Right. And I would imagine you probably have to have a certain type of partner too. They have to be pretty secure, not an insecure person where they're like questioning and not feeling comfortable and feeling like maybe you're that they're threatened or something like that.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't really have much in the way of firsthand experience with that, but many of my coworkers, however, have shared that by all means, jealousy is something that can potentially arise in any healthy relationship. Jealousy is just another emotion, and it's how you respond to that, which is what really makes the difference.
Right, right. All the difference in the world, yeah. So, here's something else. So I told everybody I was interviewing you, so they were all looking very forward to hearing the interview. And I did get a question from someone that talks about, and you've kind of covered it a little bit, but I'm going to shoot for this size. So, say for instance, you obviously see people of very different sizes. And when I say sizes, I mean sizes of the men, sizes of their penis, different things like that. So
Yeah.
yeah. So how do you handle that? I mean, is there a time when you have seen a penis that was maybe, you thought maybe not have been the right size for you and you're like, okay, no. How do you handle that?
By and large, with lube, size really hasn't been a difficulty for me.
Okay.
With that said, when it does come to anal sex, however, by all means, I always tell people, hey, we need to make sure that we're size compatible before I can commit to doing any sort of anal activities with you.
Right.
There's so many different positions that you can use to really make the difference between whatever size you happen to be dealing with. So let's say the gentleman is of particularly gifted size and he's very well endowed.
Mm-hmm.
For a guest like that, I might deploy my sex sofa, have them lean back, and it lifts their hips up ever so slightly. So this way there isn't as intense as penetration. However, with me straddling them on top, they're still getting that same depth, that same pleasure without necessarily the deep, deep intensity that might be uncomfortable.
Right.
When it comes to gentlemen that are of perhaps a smaller size, other positions that can work extremely well are those involving a sex wedge or sex pillow to kind of lift my hips up and bring me closer to that person to again get that nice depth, penetration, and pleasurable sensation.
Right. Okay. Okay. So you have your ways of being able to handle that. And I'm sure, there might be some women listening that maybe they have a partner who's well endowed or maybe not so much, and they can maybe take some of your tips too on how to handle that.
Yes, there's so many wonderful sex toys and sex aids that can be brought into the equation that really help act as equalizers. For example, if I have a guest that's a little bit concerned about the firmness of their erection, we might use vibrators to help enhance stimulation and sensation. This works particularly well with those that have sciatic pain, nerve damage, or on medication that might affect the quality of their erection. And by all means, sex isn't limited to just traditional penis and vagina.
Right.
There's so many different activities that can be explored using hands and mouths, toys, and even just the simple sensation of cuddling with someone can be incredibly pleasurable.
Right. Okay. And so you have the title also, and I think I mentioned it earlier, that you are a sex educator. So you've just educated us, I think, on some things. But so tell me a little bit more about your sex educator experience and what you do, how you do that.
Yes, I have taught on all sorts of different topics, everything from safe sex skills for threesomes to how to tie your partner up safely, how to negotiate your very first BDSM scene, how to open up communication in the bedroom, how to find out what your partner enjoys, etc. And oftentimes my guests will actually book me for sex education experiences at the ranch where they'll identify something that they want to learn more about, either personally or with their partner. And we'll go over those details in advance over text message. And then when they arrive at the ranch, they kind of get that one on one sex education experience.
Okay.
So let's be real, sex education in our country is,
Oh my
well,
gosh. Yeah.
to say it's lacking is an understatement. I
Yes.
want to say the statistic is that only 13 of the 50 states require sex education to even be scientifically accurate.
Right.
13.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. That's not even half, which
Yes.
says that the vast majority of Americans are severely lacking in their sex ed. They're not discussing women's pleasure. They're not discussing the arousal cycle. They're not talking about how do you put on a condom? How do you have
Yes.
sex safely when you want to engage in anal? What lubricant should you be using with condoms? And none of these really important topics are actually getting covered. And so it's something that I've kind of incorporated into my role as a sex worker too.
Yeah. It's really sad because I've been talking to other people on the Lovers Lounge, and we've been really discussing the fact that yes, I mean, most of us really don't know what we think we know. We really don't know.
Mhm.
There's a lot of men that probably, and maybe they don't know that they don't know. You know what I mean? That too. But
Mhm.
just in regards to sex education, and like you said, 13 out of all the states, um, it's obvious that we have a gap there, a learning gap, and people need to know more. And so that's really why
Mhm.
why I do this show. It's not, some people probably aren't comfortable listening to us talk about this, but it's really to make sure that people are educated. And I know a lot of women and a lot of men think that they know everything and that they couldn't possibly learn anything else, but I beg to differ, and so that's why we have the Lovers Lounge. Um, I want to talk a little bit about BDSM. You mentioned it, how to tie
Mhm.
someone up safely. Let's talk a little bit. First off, tell what BDSM is, and then let's go into the tying up and how to do it safely.
Yes, BDSM, depending on who you ask, stands for bondage, domination, submission, and masochism. Sometimes the S is substituted with sadism instead of submission. And there's a few other substitutions that you might find online, but by and large, it refers to a host of kink and fetish activities that are a little bit outside your typical realm of vanilla. BDSM activities can include impact play, such as flogging someone or using a belt. It can include spanking. It can include breath play. You can tie somebody up within BDSM. You can have a power exchange where one person is more dominant and the other is more submissive. In fact, you can take that to any degree that you so want. And that's the beauty of BDSM is that it very much so is all encompassing in that you have the ability to explore all these different activities and whatnot within that space. When it comes to bondage or the act of using rope, it's extremely, extremely important to not just grab a hank of rope, tie somebody's wrists up, and bam, there you go, you're good to go. There's actually a number of different things that you want to take into consideration. For example, does that person have any circulatory issues? Are they on any medication that could affect their blood pressure or their heart rate? Do they have any previous injuries that you should be aware of, such as a healed broken wrist? And then the technique that you use to tie someone up is just as important. You never want to put knots on the inside of somebody's wrist where it's going to be compressing against all the veins that are there. Instead, when you're tying somebody's arms, it's most ideal to either have the wrists pointing at each other or have the arms folded one on top of the other with the wrists inward and the arms kind of cradled against the body. This way, you're tying on the outside of the arms, not the inside of them. The same is true for legs. You really don't want to put a lot of knots across the back of the heel. You want to make sure that you're using even pressure, that of course you're using new proper rope designed for this activity, and also make sure that the person isn't allergic to whatever material you happen to be using. Common rope material includes jute, hemp, cotton, silk, bamboo, MSP, etc. And of course, there's a dozen different blends and about a million different colors of rope that you can potentially use.
Okay. So now there's probably somebody listening that maybe this term is something that they'd never heard of until now. And so they're listening to you talk about tying someone up and all that. Can you just kind of share the rationale for why BDSM? So why do people choose to do this?
There's really not one quote unquote correct answer as to why people choose to engage in BDSM. For some people, it's sensory. They like the sensation of rope pressed against their skin. Other people actually get pleasure out of the pain, which would be considered masochism. So, for example, kind of that pleasure pain when you're really aroused and somebody is playing with your nipples maybe a little bit more roughly than they normally would. And like, you can feel that it's uncomfortable, but at the same time, it turns you on. That can kind of be an aspect of masochism. Others enjoy the ability to kind of give up control to this other person and put their trust in them that they're going to do whatever actions have previously been negotiated about. And it's a really wonderful thing that can bring couples together on such a unique level. A lot of my guests that have been together in long-term relationships, 10, 15 years, and they're not quite sure how to spice up their sex life, one of the very first things that I encourage them to explore is sensory play, which involves using a blindfold to, of course, blind one partner, and then use a variety of different implements, everything from a cold butter knife to a warm rabbit fur to create different sensations across their body. And since they're unable to see what's happening, it ends up being this really immersive sensory experience for them, which is really kind of erotic.
All right. And so I'm glad that you started to talk about couples, married couples, just couples in general, that are indulging with you with this, because I wanted to talk about your work with couples. So that's one way that you work with couples. But what's another way that couples may come to the ranch and need your help?
Communication is such a big one, and it's both in and out of the bedroom. Oftentimes, couples will come to me saying, hey, I don't know how to tell him what I like, or, oh, I really want to be able to find out what she enjoys more. And what I find is that oftentimes there's a lack of communication throughout their relationship, that it isn't limited to just sex, that they actually aren't sure how to share ideas about dates or things that they find entertaining, hobbies, interests, etc. So while it might originate from the bedroom, those skills inevitably end up coming in handy really throughout the course of the relationship. Like, if you're able to tell your partner, hey, rather than fingering me with 3 fingers. I actually prefer if you use just one and a little bit slowly. Yeah, just like that. That feels good. When you are able to have that kind of intimate conversation with your partner, it becomes so much easier to communicate on anything really in your relationship.
Right. I can't tell you how many times I have, in talking with people that I've interviewed, how we've talked about communication as being another deficit, not only sex education, but communication just in general, that people just have a difficult time really communicating and talking and expressing their needs and wants. It
Yes,
really is
and
amazing. Yeah.
and that's not anyone's fault. It's,
Yeah.
if anything, the fault of our society because we don't really create a narrative in which we teach people how do we share these thoughts and ideas. Instead, we're taught to just kind of assume things and be like, oh, well, I mean, she didn't say that she didn't like that, so I'm going to guess that she probably does like that. So a huge part of my encounters with couples include encouraging them to be a little bit more vocal in the bedroom and not just use dirty talk, but use intimate talk where they actually talk about how something makes them feel in a descriptive capacity. Like, ooh, I really enjoy that sensation that you're doing right now, and I want you to keep doing it. Well, if you don't tell them that, how are they going to know that they're doing the right thing?
Exactly. Exactly. All right. So you are helping couples and they've had their experience with you, and then they leave. You've obviously tried to give them some education and some tips on what they can take with them so that maybe they can continue this. Um,
Hmm.
do you ever get feedback from couples after they've left, just to tell you, how much they've enjoyed what you taught them and what it's done for them since they've left?
Oh, yes. That's something that happens fairly often for me where guests will kind of either message me a couple days later and be like, oh my God, I tried that thing. And oh my God, it worked. You're right. Holy crap. Thank you. And that's really my reward is getting to hear that what I'm bringing to the table is impacting people's lives and is benefiting them.
Yeah. So, what are some tips then that you can give? I mean, obviously, you've given couples tips and what they can do together. So, perhaps there's a lady listening right now who sort of, things have gotten a little bit bored, in the bedroom, just sort of monotonous in their marriage and their sexual relationship. Um, you're talking to her right now. What tips can you give her to maybe spice up some things and take their experience to the next level?
Yes. One thing that many couples fail to ever engage in is mutual masturbation. And how I would choose to bring that topic up is to perhaps one evening after dinner, while you're in bed with your partner, kind of look over and be like, hey, how do you touch yourself? What brings you pleasure? I want to get to know your body better, so I want you to show me what brings you pleasure. And then I want to return the favor and show you what I enjoy. And getting to watch your partner touch themselves is incredibly, incredibly erotic. And it also gives you a lot of information about what your partner enjoys. If there's a certain hand technique, or you might notice, like, ooh, he kind of like traces his inner thigh with his hands. And, oh, okay. So the next time I'm going down on him and giving him a blowjob, I'm going to think to myself to incorporate that since I now know that's one of his pleasure spots.
Hmm. Okay, good. And then what would you say for men that are listening that probably think that they're doing everything right, but maybe they could use a little help?
My dudes, foreplay is your friend. It takes 15 minutes for the female body to become fully aroused. And the reason why I like to emphasize this is because, guys, you get turned on in about, 60 seconds, give or take, and you're like, ta-da, I have a boner, I'm ready to go.
Right.
But the female body is going to take a little bit longer. And so I recommend working on your foreplay technique. Start by slowly undressing your partner and touching their body while they're still clothed. Like trace your hands over their bra, over their panties, over their dress, kind of squeeze their butt a little bit and kind of romance them up a little bit. You can even incorporate slowly undressing as part of your foreplay, lifting the hem of their dress up, kissing up their side while you remove their dress, maybe using your teeth on the zipper, as stereotypical as it sounds. It ends up actually being really erotic when you undress your partner with intention. Not to mention that it also slows the whole experience down, which of course is only going to benefit you because now your partner is going to be just as aroused as you are. It's so, so important to take your time with foreplay and not just rush to go right into it. You want the experience to feel just as good for her as it does for you. And I'll tell you guys right now, if you just like rush to the chase, she's probably not going to be particularly aroused, and it probably isn't going to feel particularly lovely. The other tip that I have is lube. Lube is your friend. Use more lube when you're touching yourself, when you're playing with your partner, when you're having sex. The wetter, the better, seriously. The lack of lubrication is the number one cause of men losing sensation, and it oftentimes will result in something called death grip syndrome, where they're unable to get an erection or finish with a partner because they've damaged their nerve endings so much because they're using this aggressive gripping force without any lubrication at all. And as a result, the woman's body can't compete with the strength of a man's hand. So if you're running into issues in that regard, consider introducing some lube into your masturbation. It'll make a tremendous difference.
Right. And speaking of masturbation, I probably should take a step back too with this. There may be some people who are females that are uncomfortable with touching themselves. Why do you think that is, Alice?
Shame, 110%. It's based off of shame. Very likely, if somebody has shame in regards to their own physical pleasure, it originates from something that someone said to them at some point in their life, whether it be a parent walking in on them, touching themselves when they were younger and then stigmatizing and shaming it, to a religious morality concern, or even just a judgment of the self where, because we don't talk about, say, female masturbation in sex education, they feel as if there's something wrong with them, that there's something incorrect about enjoying their bodies. And I really hate to say it, but again, sex education and the lack thereof is really an originating factor for that internalized stigma and shame.
Yeah. And there's probably something else I'm going to mention that plays a part in this. Not to say that watching it or not watching it is bad or good or whatever, but pornography.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are men that watch, and hopefully they're not using that as a guide to what they should be doing to and for women, because some of that maybe not necessarily the norm or should be done. So can you kind of expound on that, or what are your thoughts about that, Alice?
Yes, sex is really a performative art. It is exaggerated. It is done for the camera. And I've listened to many interviews with porn stars that talk about the fact that porn sex is not a healthy, nor is it a good model for what intimate relationships should look like between two partners. Now, that's not to say that there isn't porn that's recently been created that is more demonstrative of proper techniques in romance. There's an entire genre now called romance porn, which is very soft and sensuous, with a focus on kissing and touching and a gentleness that is really, really beautiful to see. Whenever guests share their porn experiences with me, I encourage them to start watching more of this romantic type porn that is really true to life. There's actually a condition called porn-induced erectile dysfunction, or PIED for short, that originates from being so visually stimulated that anything less than a 10-girl orgy involving whips and chains and bondage just doesn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really problematic because the reality is your sex life probably isn't going to look like a porn flick.
Yes. Yes. So I think that's pretty sad. So if they get kind of used to that or what they're seeing, then and they don't have that, it's going to be a problem for them,
Hmm.
or could
The
be.
desensitization really ends up being a huge contributing factor. And porn kind of tends to have this rabbit hole effect where you start off searching for one thing and then you're on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And by the time you're done, you've got 15 tabs open, each one more extreme and hardcore than the next. And then by the time you're finished, guys oftentimes are like, oh God, what did I get myself into? I'm just going to X out of all of this real quick here and pretend that didn't happen. But their bodies begin to crave that visualization, and they have a longing for this extremeness that is really difficult to replicate in real life.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, Alice, I think that we have learned a lot listening to you today. So, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, you kind of mentioned it earlier about your email address and the Bunny Ranch and all that, but why don't you say it again just in case?
Yes, you can always reach me, Alice Little at bunnyranch.com, or you can always visit my website, thealicelittle.com. I also have a YouTube channel. One of the things that I have on there is actually a tour of the Moonlight Bunny Ranch.
Yeah.
So if you're curious to take a look and see what's inside a brothel, you can always follow me on YouTube, which is Alice Little TV.
Yeah, I did check you out on there and I saw you with a couple of girls that are also at the Bunny Ranch and you guys were talking. And so I thought it was pretty cool. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
it's a lot of fun.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Alice, for being on the show. We really have enjoyed listening to you, and I hope that my listeners have learned something from hearing what you had to say today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's really my goal to eliminate stigma and shame around the sex work profession. This is something that has existed all throughout history in every single major civilization since the dawn of time. There's nothing shameful about being a sex worker or seeing a sex worker. Much in the same way that you go to a doctor when you have a physical problem, go see a sex worker if there's something sexual you want to work on.
All
There's
right.
nothing to be afraid of.
All right. Well, thanks again. We've enjoyed you, and I hope that everyone has enjoyed listening to Alice on the Lover's Lounge, where we talk to experts and other guests on issues related to love, relationships, and sex. I am your host, Tina Love, and it has been an extreme pleasure hanging out with you. Until next time, stay in peace and, of course, love. Bye-bye.